Daniel Faust. That felt good, right? Freedom, right? We've been talking about this week about going over and taking off the mask. And when you take off the mask, when you get home from work or whatever places you're going to, the feeling of taking off a mask is great. We were never meant to go over and wear these masks, but COVID went over and brought these new practices into our lives, right? The sad part is that you've been wearing a mask before COVID, and that's what we've been talking about this week because our theme this month is take off the mask. And I'm not meaning in the sense of COVID, I mean in the sense of the mental, emotional, social, and spiritual mask that we put on each and every day as we go over and connect with people and truly are not being connected at all. So we're going to discuss this week about how the mask, what we wear, what places we put it on, and how to take it off so we can be free. We'll be focusing on that holistically throughout the whole month. But this week's theme is about the bedroom. And as we discussed each and every day, a mask in a relationship is a defensive mechanism that we do to avoid pain. But today we're going to talk about why do we don these masks? Because when COVID came, we donned them because obviously pandemic, we were told from the CDC, there's things back and forth of not wearing it, but the overall majority, we donned it on. But we've been wearing masks mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and socially the majority of our lives. So we want to talk about why you donned it on in the first place. So let's go dive into it. So first off, we don these masks because being authentic is hard, right? And the reason why we're authentic is based on personal confidence. If I feel I can trust you and you can trust me, I'm going to go take off the mask. But if I don't feel confident, or you don't feel confident in me, or maybe you don't feel confident in a scenario that maybe I'm bringing or you're bringing, we go over and either put the mask on or we take it off. As we did in COVID, you go over the first couple of months, we wore it around everybody. You see these people wearing it in cars, you see it everywhere you go. Now that it's been on for a while, we've now made the sacrifice of which people we feel comfortable around and we don't wear it. They say us to wear it everywhere, but let's reality speak. Come on. If I feel personally confident, like I work with my commander, I work with my executive officer, I work with, my unit training managers during my day job, and I'm with them every single day, and I'm not seeing them have any symptoms and whatnot, and it's day after day after day, why am I going to go over and wear the mask, especially if you do that? Personally, I'm just going to go over and take it off. Now, I don't know you, and I don't have personal confidence, and you come knocking at my door, I'm going to go over and more than likely take this mask, go scramble at my desk and get it on, and then the second you leave, I'm going to take it off and go, we even breathe heavier when we take off the mask because we're never meant to wear it. That's the same thing that happens in relationships. It's based on personal confidence. And we'll put on the mask if it's somebody new. We're going to go meet with somebody tonight that we met on Facebook. And at first, probably going to keep on the mask and go over. But as build confidence and build trust in the relationship, and you see them day in, day forth, you're willing to take the risk. So it's the same thing that we do mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and socially. Is if we feel personally confident, we take off the mask. If we don't feel confident, we don't. And when confidence is shaken, so you can feel confident with somebody for a bit, but when it gets shaken, it either be shaken by a transaction or a process or what the person goes over and says, or maybe it's a respect issue. It could be someone close to you, which is your spouse, which we're talking about today, but it also can be with friends and family and everything else. And that's why we're speaking about the topic the entire month. This is the critical time, is when confidence gets shaken, is where we're going to decide. And we can decide this consciously, like going over and doing it in our mind and saying, hey, I'm going to protect myself with my wife or my husband because of what they said, and maybe I'm not going to be vulnerable. Or maybe I just do it unconsciously because maybe that mask was developed when I was a kid or through another situation and it looks similar. So we go unconsciously, you can put and don on the mask. Have you ever gone over, and now we've been wearing these masks for months, you go over and you just don't realize, like, you're still wearing it. And you're like, what? I didn't even realize I was wearing it. So we can put masks on mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and socially, consciously or unconsciously when we don that mask. I want to give you some examples on when we don a mask because this is probably a concept that is foreign to you. If you haven't read the book The Cure or The Cure for Parents or Bo's Cafe, this is all inspired by John Lynch's book The Cure. And there's also a new book called The Two Roads that came out just recently. So definitely, if you're wondering where all this content's coming from, go back and go connect it there. We'll go put that in the show notes at the end. But examples of when to don the mask. One example is to prove to others that we are worthy of their love. Like when we're connecting and we're dating and whatnot, especially in that particular regard, we do it in dating, but we also do it in marriage too. Is that if we want them to love us in a certain way, we might don the mask to go over and to prove to our husband, to our wives, that we're worthy of their love in whatever aspect it is. So I might or might not, I might overshare something to get you to think that I'm worthy of your love, or I'll undershare something in that particular regard, proving to you is if I put this front up and I put up this mask of who I am, then maybe that's the reason why I donned it on. Maybe there's something in my life that I did that was embarrassing, or you did that's not embarrassing, and you don't want to lose their love. So you go do these extra actions either in marriage or not, or maybe there's an argument and you feel you need to shore up the grades, so you start doing these things. Also, maybe another reason why we don on the mask is to prove worthiness of being loved. So we might not be doing it for a specific person, but we might be just doing it overall, and it carried in our marriage. Maybe it was our father or our mother that we were trying to prove worthiness of being loved, and maybe we never got it. And then it expounded into our bedroom, because if we're not getting love from somewhere, we're going to be looking at it from someone or somewhere. That same thing happens on a continuous basis, is that we are wanting love. So we might put on the mask to prove worthy of being loved. I do all these great things. I do all these tasks. I do all these things. Then I'm now loved because of my worthiness. And we're going to talk about more on what the lie of that is, because love is not a worthiness issue. You're worthy because you're worthy. You're not worthy because you did certain things to be loved. Also, maybe you donned on a mask because you don't want people to not feel sorry for you. I really made a bad phrase in that one, but basically is that you go over and gone through maybe a situation and they say, I'm sorry and whatnot, or you think it's going to be, I'm sorry. So you're going to go get this clout of not being sorry, and you don't need to be sorry for me. I'll go figure it out. I'll go deal with it. It's just a situation, whatever. So we might don on the mask of confidence, even though it's not confidence. And we're like, don't feel sorry for me, punk, and then you go over and you don the mask, but you were hurt in some regard. That's the reason why you donned the mask. Also, another reason why we don the mask is fear of knowing us truly. And this happens the most in marriage. You become intimate, you share emotional vulnerability. Maybe there's something from the past, from like when you were a kid, or maybe you've gone through a traumatic time or whatever, or maybe you were, loud and verbose and when you were dating, and now in marriage, you're like a quiet person and subdued and whatnot. And maybe you don on the mask because if you truly said, hey, I'm not social, or I don't like to travel, or I'm not into reading, or maybe this, if you come from a faith base, like this Bible believing person that you thought it was, I'm really questioning my faith and whatnot. And if I truly share that out, my mental, my emotional, my spiritual, my social true self, you might think that I go over and run. So you go over and don the mask and say like, yes, I am the greatest moral person in the world, or I love reading, or blah, 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 or whatever it is. And then you go over and you now shore up the grade, and you do all these things to go over, and you hope that the person doesn't run. So that might be another reason you don the mask. Another example is you want to be seen as great. We never want to go see it as badly in our marriages. You don't want to go over and be physically naked and then mentally naked, emotionally naked, and socially there, and say specifically, see me, I suck, and I suck a lot. You don't go over and do that. That's something that's not natural. So we'll put on a mask to say that we're great. We'll do all the mental and emotional and physical and social exercises to lift ourselves up, to go and be great. And maybe that's the mask you did because maybe you weren't told that you were great. in that particular regard. And you're not living it out of you, you're living it in a performance and in a dance in that particular regard. So you don on the mask again to go over and make yourself look perfect in front of your husband's or wife's eyes all the time. And that's just some of the examples. Again, you might need to go start looking at yourself and say, what, when, and where do I don on a mask? Because you might dawn on it something more in depth. So I highly challenge you to go read The Cure, to go over in the book Two Roads, to go over and find out what examples do you dawn on your mask. But all these examples are just examples. If we know the reason, the example why we're donning the mask, but if we don't know what the main root is, we're just going to go shore up the grade and go put up another mask on to go over and deal with the mask. So if I say my main root is not feeling sorry for myself, and then I don't feel sorry for myself, but then I go over and perform a bunch of stuff to go over and feel not sorry for myself, I'm donning another mask of performance. So I'm now changing out one mask for another mask, and that doesn't help. We want to take off the entire mask from start to finish. So we need to know what the main root is. And what the main root is, and again, this comes out of the book The Cure from John Lynch, highly recommend you read it, is the concept of shame. Now, before I dive into it, I want to give you a precursor, because shame is something we could really dive into, and this could be a 3-hour topic. But we want to go give you fast, impactful information, and for you to dive in deeper into the resources that we share with you. But I want to come into a precursor to all this before. Because with shame, it's actually being afraid is the precursor, which can drive us to one or two roads typically. The road of guilt and the road of shame before a mask is donned on. One of them goes over and allows you to go over and to deal and to be free, and the other one will go over and help you don the mask on. And definitely, we don't want you donning the mask on. You're out in COVID and you're going over being exposed, that's a real disease that needs to be taken care of. So please, make your own decisions and don where appropriately is. But when it comes to mental, emotional, spiritual, social issues, the majority of the time, especially in the bedroom, the most intimate relationship, the mask is not needed. And the thing is that you'll find out maybe both of you are putting on masks. And when you both take it off and you both love each other for who you truly show your true face to, you'll go over and not have to don a mask anymore. So the two roads of donning on a mask, you have guilt and you have shame. So we're going to go over in guilt first. Let me see if I can remember my hand. Guilt first. Okay, we're going to move this hand. So hard in this visual. So guilt. This guilt hand goes over, and this road leads us to forgiveness, to be clean, into confession, and also can over and bring reconciliation and restoration. So guilt is the natural reaction that we have when someone goes over and does something to us, or we do something to somebody else. We should feel guilty if we're doing something wrong or something's being done to us. And either way, what guilt's supposed to do, what the natural inclination was supposed to be, is lead us to forgiveness, to be clean, confession, and then eventually over to reconciliation and restoration. So when I go admit my wrong to my wife, instead of going over and shoring up and saying, yeah, everything's fine, I never did that and anything else, and then once we admit it, we can breathe again. We can breathe that fresh, clean air to go over and to get that and to restore us and to reconcile us. The same thing happens when you do get into an oxygen mask, and that's why when COVID patients do get sick, they put on respirators, because they need the most precious, purest, and consistent air as possible. And what guilt can go over and do is when you let go of the guilt and you actually confess, and then you lift off that guilt mask instead of just leaving it on, it leads to forgiveness. It leads to being clean and confession, and then reconciliation and restoration. So that's the one thing when fear kicks in, is that it's going to drive between one and the other. So, but what can happen is if you allow guilt to take over and you go over and allow it to convert over, and again, this can be consciously or unconsciously. It also depends on how many scenarios you're going through and how active you're working through your walk and transformation from Warhero to Superhero is guilt can easily and quickly go over and convert to shame. So let's go switch hands. Yeah, it's this one, right? I get this confused constantly. No, I wasn't with this hand. It was this one. There we go. So this is going to be my shame hand. And I'm ashamed that I don't know my hands on this. I'm kidding. I always get this confused all the time. I'm okay with it. So shame goes over if we allow guilt to fester and go into shame. It's going to go drive us to hide. We become convinced that we cannot truly be forgiven. We're not become clean. And reconciliation and restoration doesn't happen. And when those 5 things don't happen, it is a perfect formula in storm for us to put on the mask. And when you wear shame so long, just like if you wear the mask all day and you get used to it, or anybody else that wears eyeglasses or dentures or contacts or anything that you don on that becomes, and if you wear it so long, you don't even realize that you're in it. So you might have been in this shame mask for so long, and there's many reasons probably why you donned it on, but the equivalent was shame, that you just left it on the entire time. I don't know about you guys, but I've been fortunate that I only have to wear this mask very sparingly because most of the humans I work with are virtual. So I've had the opportunity to not wear the mask. But if you're wearing it like the last place I worked, like Axon, working 12 hours a day, I could easily go over and see myself getting home and not taking off my mask. And that's the same thing that happens with shame. When guilt goes over and converts to shame, it can become as an asphyxiated mask that we donned on and we don't realize we're wearing it. But the problem is that, especially as we're talking about the bedroom, your spouse will know. Because we naturally are mask inspectors. We know if people are authentic or are real, if they're transparent and they're vulnerable. Those people that are transparent and vulnerable, like we talked about in other podcasts, like my smiling commander, I don't even know if he wears a mask. We all do, but the thing is that he's so authentic and so real. It's like if he is, he's wearing the mask of being authentic and real, you know. And if that was an actual mask, which is not, I would don that on all day, you know. So, but sometimes we wear it so long we don't realize it, but other people will. So I want to give you a practical example. So I had a recent thing that happened to me. It was 10 months in the making. And basically what happened is that I went on a TDY. I went over and spent too much based on the numbers that I got, came back home and owed money. I go over and I tried to work as hard as I could to go over and get the money out, but life did not pan out. COVID destroyed a lot of people fiscally 2020. For me in 2020, I'm actually at least doing marginally well, and it's getting better each and every day. But at that time, I was financially dying. The rest of the world was like, woohoo, money. And I'm like, woohoo, dying. So I went to drill each and every month to go over and basically not get this bill paid. And eventually they took away my strike. So I went from E6 to E5, and it was kind of shameful at first. When you go over and you know the situation, I'm a transparent, honest guy, and I share this out. I'm like, hey, this is what happened and everything else. But I allowed that guilt short term to convert to shame when people kept asking me over and over again, what happened? Because they see 4 stripes compared to 5, and I'm the unit training manager, and everybody knows me. Now, in the new position, not as much because I work with the UTMs, but in this particular position, when you work in the unit, everybody knows you from the commander to everything else. So the stripe's gone. So I get down here in December and I get the job, and I had 2 tracks I would walk. I could either go over and say, hey, I made the mistake and I need to own it. I'm making reconciliation. I'm making returning around to go over and do that. I wasn't going to go allow the stripe to go and do that. Or I could beat myself up and be like, hey, I'm going to be the staff sergeant. I got shafted. I'm going to go put on an angry, bitter mask and say, the world is going over and hose me and everything else. What testimony does that have if I go over and do that? But we do that each and every day. Something bad happens to us, or we do something bad to people, and we have a choice. We can either feel the guilt, because it was true. I did spend the money, but I was told the wrong information. So I felt the guilt from that person's side, and they didn't take ownership of it. The thing is that it was all a facade. So, but in justice, after 10 months, I got restored my stripe. So we have a choice. The same thing with anything that we deal with mentally, emotionally, socially, and spiritually is that we have a choice. Are we going to go don on a mask, or are we going to go be authentic? You could have easily said, it's like, yeah, you shouldn't be talking about it. No one needs to know and everything else. But the thing is that as I be authentic and I be real, because I was pissed. I was pissed. I was angry. I'm like, I'm getting shafted for this. But the thing is that I'm not going to allow this stripe to go determine who I am. Because when you go over and you put the mask on and I get angry about it and I just hold on to the anger and bitterness of it, guess what gets the love? The stripe, not me. Because I went over and put so much focus on it, they only see that and they know it's just an angry, bitter dude. So long story short is that I chose to go over and do that. Now this took a lot of wisdom, a lot of time, and there's a lot of time in life I've gone over and I've donned that mask. All right, somebody humiliates me, somebody mocks me, somebody makes fun of me, mask. And I faked it until I made it for a long, long time. So it's not going to be a simple process, but we have a choice each and every day. Either when we do something wrong or someone does wrong to us, we have a choice. We can either go the guilt track or we can go down the shame track. And sometimes you do go down the shame track for a while, but I hope as you're going over and seeing this, that you go over and decide, especially in your marriage, is that the guilt track, even though socially it sounds wrong, I'd rather take the guilt for the hope for the restoration of things than take the shame, because once you're claimed innocent, once I got my stripe back, guilt is over. I wasn't even guilty in the first place. I was accused of doing something wrong, but the thing is I was going homeless, so I couldn't pay it. So when I got restored to tech, I have innocence, and I could still live in that brokenness and say like, oh, this happened, this is bad, and everything else. Making the choice of saying like, doesn't matter if I'm staff, tech, or master, that I'm gonna live in the worthiness of who I am and what I can deliver. So I wanted to share that with you. So what's the dang point of going over and watching this? You're like, this is a crazy flippant episode. We're in the bedroom, we're talking about masks. It's not kinky at all, and it's not COVID. You're like, what's the point? So for us this week, as you're going over and visiting the bedroom with us, and we visit different rooms each and every week, is for us, the message is for you is to have a thriving marriage. And what you need to have a thriving marriage is this, because this is a culmination of what I had realized. You need to know that we all have masks on, Don. If you're wearing these masks tightly fit to find some type of love or acceptance or proudness or boastfulness or whatever it is, or hurt and anything else, if we don't realize we're wearing it, we're definitely not going to have a thriving marriage. We'll have a facade of a thriving marriage if we go over and don it. And you might even be having a good marriage right now, but the thing is that you have a better marriage when you start realizing it. And then the second reason to go over and what's the point of this is once that you admit that truth, then you need to know what mask that you're wearing. And once you go over and do that, lastly, that you need to realize that guilt is not bad, but shame is, you can go over and actually live in a transformed life. You could be having a good marriage, you could be thinking you have a great marriage, you could be having a surviving marriage. But once you have that true intimacy of both of you, not donning the mask and seeing yourselves as not just being naked, but naked and unashamed, and the person can actually love you for you, that's a thriving marriage. And then that goes over and increases your love for anything. So when you start the journey, and this is not going to be easy, we didn't say it was going to be. If you start the journey to work through the shame of your marriage, you can go from surviving to thriving. You sometimes might not even realize that you wore the mask so long that you might even thought you were in the shame anymore. So this has been a heavy lesson. So we have one superhero challenge for you. And again, if you're bold enough to take it online, we'd love to go hear the stories because we want transformed lives. And when we rip off the mask and be unashamed and be free, we go over and grow. So take a moment this weekend to look at the mask, what you're wearing. Not the one that's physical, the one that's mental, emotional, spiritual, or social. And reflect when and why you donned on the mask. Because when you start doing that, you get into this transformation of truly being free, and then you get to grow into the destiny of your lives. That's the reason why we're able to do these things, is because we started ripping off the mask. We're still in the process each and every day and doing this. So we're on the journey with you. So don't think that we're just doing this and we're better than that. We are going over and doing this with you. We want to share that journey with you. Now, if you're seriously struggling in this particular regard, we give 20 minutes free to every single military veteran and family. Military veteran and first responder, you can even bring your family. The 20 minutes is free. Go over and we'll share our stories with you. Share what masks that we wore, and to go over and to help you go over and take it off when you're ready. And if 20 minutes is not enough, you can always connect us with consultations or even join our Patreon. When you join our Patreon for low as $5 a month, you can start becoming that marriage superhero. And we'll start going through those types of topics with you to go help you go over and thrive. Practical tips, emotional challenges, mental, spiritual, every type of thing that we go through, because we want you to go over and thrive. So I want to thank you for joining. Thank you for bringing the conversation. Always remember, this is always a dialogue, never a monologue. And if you catch us on the live, hashtag on the live, you do it on the replay, do it on the replay. And always remember that we're here to go over and support you, no matter if it's asynchronously by just listening, which we thank you for being loyal listeners, or synchronously in the sense of having assistance. And we'd love to go over and to help you through the season so you can go over and rip off the mask. We'll see you next week in the living room on how to go over and help yourself to rip off the mask and help your kids not to don